Drummerly.com Unlimited Drama Series.
The notification sound from Celeste's second phone cut through the 2 a.m. silence like a knife through my last shred of trust. I stood there in our laundry room, holding the device she'd forgotten to hide, watching another text from D light up the screen. Can't wait to feel you again tomorrow night, beautiful. Hotel room 412 is ready. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. Oliver Harlan, 42 years old, former IT consultant turned home renovation contractor, standing in his perfectly organized suburban Connecticut laundry room, reading proof that his wife of 20 years was screwing someone named D while claiming to attend corporate conferences. I should have been devastated. Instead, I felt something cold and calculating settle into my chest like concrete mix finding its level. The house around me, our tastefully updated colonial with its crown molding I'd installed myself, the kitchen island I'd built from reclaimed barnwood, the finished basement where I'd spent countless evenings while Celeste worked late, suddenly felt like a crime scene, evidence of a life built on lies. Celeste Harlan, 39, corporate communications director at Meridian Tech Solutions, was supposed to be in Boston right now. At least, that's what she'd told me when she kissed my cheek yesterday morning, her lips tasting like the expensive lipstick she only wore for important meetings. Just a 2-day conference, Ollie, she'd said, not meeting my eyes as she loaded her overnight bag into her BMW. Boring stuff about corporate messaging strategies. I'll probably extend it through the weekend if the networking opportunities are good. Networking. Right. I scrolled through the message history, my contractor's methodical mind cataloging each piece of evidence like I was preparing a job estimate. 3 months of messages, hotel reservations, photos I definitely didn't take, plans for weekend getaways that coincided perfectly with her work trips. The front door's security system chimed. Someone walking past our motion sensor. Through the kitchen window, I spotted Marcia Peterson from next door, walking her ancient poodle and trying very hard not to look directly at our house. Marcia, 60-something retired teacher, knew everyone's business before they knew it themselves. She knocked on the back door. Ollie, you okay, honey? Saw the lights on. I opened the door, still holding Celeste's phone. Hey, Marcia, just couldn't sleep. Her sharp eyes took in my expression, the phone in my hand, the way I was standing like someone had just told me my house was built on a sinkhole. Everything all right with Celeste? I thought she was out of town. She is, or she's supposed to be. Marcia's face shifted into what I'd learned to recognize as her gathering intelligence expression. Funny thing, I could have sworn I saw her BMW at that new luxury apartment complex on Riverside Drive yesterday afternoon. You know, the one with the glass towers? But I figured I was mistaken since you said she was traveling. The concrete feeling in my chest hardened. Riverside Drive? Building C, I think. I was driving past after my dentist appointment. Probably wasn't her car though, right? Lots of silver BMWs around here. I managed a smile that felt like it might crack my face. Probably not. Thanks for checking on me, Marcia. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table with Celeste's phone and my laptop. 20 years in IT before I switched to renovation work meant I still knew my way around digital breadcrumbs. Celeste's iCloud account, her credit card statements, her Google timeline. She'd been sloppy, probably because she never thought her simple contractor husband would know how to connect the dots. The dots painted a clear picture. Damian Voss, senior vice president at her company. 40 years old, divorced, drove a Tesla Model S, lived in Building C at Riverside Luxury Apartments. The same building where Marcia had spotted Celeste's car. I found his LinkedIn profile, his company bio, photos from corporate events where he stood just a little too close to my wife. Tall, expensively dressed, the kind of guy who probably used words like synergy and paradigm shift in casual conversation. My phone buzzed. Text from Pete Morrison, my best friend since high school, and owner of Morrison's Tap, the local dive bar, where contractors and cops drank away their frustrations. You awake? Bar's closed, but I'm still here doing inventory. Come by if you need to talk. Bring beer. I typed back, on my way. And Pete? I'm about to blow up my life. Before leaving, I did something that surprised me with its cold precision. I printed out everything. Every text, every photo, every hotel receipt, every lie documented in black and white. I put it all in a manila folder, labeled Celeste's networking activities, and left it on her pillow, along with business cards for 3 divorce attorneys I'd looked up online. Then I packed a bag, loaded my truck, and drove toward Morrison's Tap. feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Completely, absolutely certain about what came next. Noel Morrison's tap sat on the edge of our suburban paradise, like a bruise on polished marble. The kind of place where working people went to remember they were still human after dealing with corporate bullshit all day. Pete had inherited it from his father, along with the philosophy that good beer and honest conversation could solve most problems. I found him in the back office, surrounded by inventory sheets and empty bottles, his graying hair sticking up like he'd been running his hands through it. Pete Morrison, 44, built like the linebacker he'd been in high school, with the kind of face that invited confessions from strangers. Jesus, Ollie, you look like someone died. I dropped into the chair across from his desk and pulled out Celeste's phone. Someone did. My marriage. I told him everything while he poured whiskey from a bottle he kept hidden behind the filing cabinet. Pete listened without interrupting, his expression shifting from surprise to disgust to something that looked like barely contained rage. Damien Voss, he said when I finished. Yeah, I know that asshole. He's been in here a few times, usually with different women, always acting like he owns the place, snapping his fingers at my bartenders, leaving shitty tips. You've seen him with Celeste? Not recently, but now that you mention it. Pete pulled out his own phone, scrolled through something. About 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months. They were in the corner booth, all over each other. I figured she was just someone from his office. The whiskey burned, but not as much as the image of my wife making out with her boss in the local bar where everyone knew me. Did anyone else see them? Probably. You know how it is here. But Ollie, listen to me. My phone rang. Celeste. I let it go to voicemail, then played it back on speaker. Her voice filled the office, bright and false as artificial sweetener. Hi, honey. Just wanted to check in. The conference is running long, so I think I'll stay through the weekend like I mentioned. The hotel is nice, and there's a spa here that looks amazing. I'll probably be unreachable for most of tomorrow. They have us in back-to-back sessions. Love you. Pete stared at the phone like it had personally insulted his mother. She's good, I'll give her that. Sounds completely innocent. She's had practice. I pulled up the message thread between Celeste and Damien. Found the one from earlier that evening. Listen to this. Can't wait to spend the whole weekend in bed with you. Tell Oliver you're at that spa. He'll never check. I felt that cold certainty settling deeper into my bones. Pete, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Shoot. How long have people known? His face told me everything before he opened his mouth. Ollie, how long, Pete? He sighed, suddenly looking older than his 44 years. There've been rumors for maybe 4 months. Nothing concrete, just people talk. Marcia Peterson mentioned seeing them together. Jim Walsh from the hardware store said he spotted them at that fancy restaurant in Hartford. But nobody wanted to be the one to tell you. Because poor Ollie couldn't handle the truth? Because you're a good guy who didn't deserve it, and we all hoped we were wrong. I finished my whiskey and stood up. Well, now you know you weren't wrong, and now I know exactly what I'm going to do about it. Ollie, whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking that Celeste and her boyfriend are about to learn that underestimating the simple contractor husband was the biggest mistake of their lives. I drove home through empty suburban streets, past houses full of sleeping families who probably trusted each other. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my days fixing other people's homes, while mine rotted from the inside. Back in my driveway, I sat in the truck for a few minutes, looking at the house I'd poured my heart into. Tomorrow, Celeste would come home expecting to find her devoted husband waiting with dinner and questions about her conference. Instead, she'd find something else entirely. I pulled out my phone and started making a list. Not a revenge fantasy, a project plan. Because if 20 years of marriage had taught me anything, it was that Celeste respected results more than feelings. And if 2 decades in construction had taught me anything, it was that the best demolition jobs required careful planning. And time to show my wife what happened when you tried to renovate a life built on lies. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of Connecticut weather that made everything look like a crime scene waiting to happen. I'd been awake since 5, sitting in my home office with coffee and a legal pad, sketching out my plan like I was designing a deck edition. The difference was, this project involved tearing something down instead of building it up. Celeste's BMW pulled into the driveway at 11:47 a.m., exactly when she'd texted she'd be home. I watched from the kitchen window as she sat in the car for a few minutes, checking her phone, probably deleting incriminating messages. Then she grabbed her overnight bag and walked to the front door like she was returning from exactly where she'd said she'd be. "Ollie, I'm home." Her voice carried that particular brightness she used when she was lying about something important. I'd learned to recognize it over the years, usually when she was explaining why she'd be late for dinner or why she needed to work another weekend. I stayed in the kitchen, arranging the manila folder I'd prepared on the counter next to her favorite coffee mug, the one that said "World's Best Wife" that our daughter Maddie had given her last Christmas. "Hey, babe." Celeste appeared in the doorway, still in her conference clothes, the expensive suit she claimed was necessary for making good impressions. "How was your weekend? Did you get that bathroom tile finished?" "Productive weekend," I said, not looking up from my coffee. "Very educational." She moved toward the coffee maker, and I heard the exact moment she spotted the folder. The little intake of breath, the pause in her step. "What's that?" "Your networking activities. Thought you might want to review them." I finally looked at her. Celeste Harlan, 39. Still beautiful in the way that required expensive maintenance, standing in our kitchen with her face going through a fascinating series of expressions. Confusion, recognition, fear, and then something that looked almost like relief. "Ollie, how long?" I kept my voice conversational, like I was asking about the weather. She opened the folder. I watched her flip through the printed texts, the photos, the hotel receipts. Her hands were steady, but a muscle in her jaw was twitching. "How long have you known? Or how long has it been going on?" "Both." She sat down across from me, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 20 years ago, before the promotions and the corporate ambition and the gradual transformation into someone who saw our marriage as another item on her professional to-do list. "The affair started about 4 months ago. You've known since last night, based on the timestamps on these printouts." I had to admire her composure. No tears, no dramatic denials, just a calm assessment of the situation. It was exactly how she handled problems at work. "Why?" "Because you stopped seeing me." The answer hit harder than I'd expected. "What's that supposed to mean?" "When's the last time you asked me about my work, my goals? When's the last time we talked about anything other than grocery lists and home improvement projects? When's the last time you were actually here to have those conversations?" She looked down at the photos, and I saw something crack in her professional facade. "That's fair. Is it serious, you and Damien?" "I don't know. Maybe. He makes me feel like I matter. And I don't?" "You make me feel like I'm married to a contractor who happens to live in the same house." We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of 20 years settling between us like dust after a demolition. Finally, she looked up. "What happens now?" I pulled out another folder, this one containing business cards and legal documents. "Now you call one of these divorce attorneys and we figure out how to split up a life." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She picked up one of the business cards, turned it over in her fingers. "What about Maddie?" "Our daughter, 19, away at college, probably studying for midterms and worrying about normal 19-year-old problems. We tell her the truth, that sometimes marriages end, and it's nobody's fault, but it is someone's fault." "Yeah, it's both our faults." Celeste stood up, folder in hand. "I'll pack some things. I can stay at Kendra's for a while." Kendra Walsh, her best friend and fellow corporate climber, who'd probably been covering for Celeste's affair from the beginning. "Good choice. I'm sure she's got lots of advice about managing this situation." "Ollie," she paused at the kitchen doorway. "I'm sorry. I really am. I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix what's broken here." After she left, I sat alone in our kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of our failed marriage and the silence of a house that suddenly felt too big. My phone buzzed with a text from Pete. "How'd it go?" I typed back. "Phase 1 complete. Time for Phase 2. Because here's what Celeste didn't understand about construction work. Before you can build something new, you have to completely clear the old foundation. And sometimes, that means making sure every last piece of the previous structure is gone. I pulled up Damien Voss's contact information and started planning his introduction to the concept of consequences. Monday morning found me sitting in my truck outside Meridian Tech Solutions, watching Celeste's BMW pull into the executive parking area. She'd spent the night at Kendra's, probably strategizing damage control over expensive wine and organic takeout. What she didn't know was that I'd spent my evening researching Meridian's corporate policies regarding workplace relationships, particularly those between supervisors and their direct reports. Amazing what you could find in employee handbooks posted on company websites. Damien's Tesla Model S arrived 15 minutes later, sliding into the spot marked D. Voss, Minus SVP Operations. I had to admit, he was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, expensively groomed, the kind of guy who probably had his shirts custom made and his coffee imported from some obscure region of Guatemala. I waited until he disappeared into the building, then got out of my truck with my toolbox. Not because I had any work to do here, but because a man in work clothes carrying tools was invisible in corporate America. Just part of the background maintenance that kept their shiny world functioning. The Tesla was beautiful, I'd give him that. Midnight blue paint that probably cost more than most people's cars. Leather interior that looked like it had never been touched by human hands. The kind
I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing.
Drunk? I have everything on video.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
of vehicle that announced its owner's success to everyone within a 50-yard radius. I walked around it slowly, appreciating the craftsmanship. Then I pulled out my phone and called the number I'd found in Celeste's messages. It rang 4 times before he answered. Damien Voss. Mr. Voss, this is Oliver Harlan. I think we need to talk. A pause. I could almost hear him calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and what kind of damage control he'd need. I'm not sure we have anything to discuss. I think we do. I'm standing next to your car right now. Another pause, longer this time. What do you want? 5 minutes of your time, man to man. I'm calling security. Go ahead. But you might want to consider whether having this conversation in front of Meridian's security team is really in your best interest. He hung up. And 10 minutes later, he emerged from the building, moving fast but trying to look casual. I was leaning against his Tesla, arms crossed, probably looking exactly like what I was, a working-class guy who'd been pushed too far. Get away from my car. Nice ride, I said, running my hand along the hood. Must be nice, having the kind of job that pays for toys like this. I said get away from my car. Relax, Damien. Can I call you Damien? I'm not here to cause trouble. Just wanted to meet the man who's been fucking my wife. He looked around the parking lot, checking for witnesses. Look, I don't know what Celeste told you. She didn't tell me anything. She didn't have to. I pulled out my phone, showed him one of the photos I'd printed. You two aren't exactly subtle. His face went white. What do you want? I want you to understand something. Celeste and I are getting divorced. That's happening regardless of what you do or don't do. But you. I stepped closer, close enough that he had to look up to meet my eyes. You're going to learn that actions have consequences. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. See, guys like you think guys like me are stupid. You think, because I work with my hands instead of pushing papers around, I don't understand how your world works. But here's what you don't understand about my world. We believe in finishing what we start. I pulled out a small valve cap tool from my pocket, the kind used for letting air out of tires. Nice tires, probably expensive to replace. You touch my car, I'll have you arrested. For what? I haven't touched anything. I put the tool back in my pocket. But you might want to check your tire pressure before you drive anywhere. Safety first, you know? I started walking back toward my truck, then turned around. Oh, and Damien, you might want to review Meridian's policy on workplace relationships. Section 4.3 is particularly interesting. Something about supervisors and subordinates requiring disclosure to HR. He was still standing there when I drove away, probably trying to figure out whether I'd actually done anything to his car, or just messed with his head. The answer was both, but he wouldn't figure that out until he tried to drive home, and discovered that all 4 of his tires were slowly losing air. Not enough to be dangerous, just enough to be expensive and embarrassing. My phone rang as I pulled into the parking lot of Morrison's Tap. Pete, how'd it go with the boyfriend? Educational for both of us. Listen, Pete, I need a favor. Name it. Tonight, around 7. I'm going to need some witnesses for a conversation. What kind of conversation? The kind where Celeste and her friends learn that their little secret isn't so secret anymore. Pete was quiet for a moment. Ollie, you sure about this? Once you go public, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. The foundation's already cracked, Pete. Now it's time to bring down the whole structure. Morrison's Tap on a Wednesday night was usually quiet, A few regulars nursing beers and watching whatever game was on the big screen. But tonight felt different. Word had gotten around that something was going to happen. The way news travels in small communities where everyone knows everyone else's business. I'd spent the afternoon making calls. To Marcia Peterson, who'd happened to mention to several neighbors that she'd seen Celeste's car at those luxury apartments. To Jim Walsh from the hardware store, who'd confirmed he'd spotted my wife having lunch with some corporate type at that expensive restaurant in Hartford. To Danny Rodriguez from the electricians union, who'd worked on Meridian's office renovation and had plenty of stories about executive behavior. By 7 o'clock, Morrison's had twice its usual crowd, not because I'd invited them, but because people could sense drama the way animals sense storms. Celeste arrived at 7:15, probably expecting a private conversation about our divorce proceedings. She'd brought Kendra Walsh for moral support, tall, blonde, the kind of woman who wore power suits like armor and treated every conversation like a corporate negotiation. They took a booth in the back, ordered white wine, and waited for me to approach them. Instead, I stayed at the bar with Pete, nursing a beer and watching the room fill up with familiar faces. "You sure about this?" Pete asked quietly. Too late to back out now. At 7:30, Damien arrived with his own backup. Greg Morrison, no relation to Pete, a slick tech executive who worked at Meridian and probably thought he was slumming by walking into a working-class bar. The room got quieter when they walked in. Not silent, but that particular kind of quiet that happens when everyone's pretending not to watch something they're all desperately curious about. I finished my beer, stood up, and walked over to their booth. "Evening, folks. Thanks for coming." Celeste looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Part anger, part fear, part resignation. "Ollie, can we please do this somewhere private?" "Private?" I pulled out a chair and sat down. "Like your affair was private? Like the hotel rooms were private? Like the lies you've been telling for 4 months were private?" The conversations at nearby tables stopped. Even the bartender turned down the TV. Kendra leaned forward, switching into damage control mode. "Oliver, I think everyone would benefit from keeping this civil." "Civil?" I laughed, and it came out harder than I'd intended. "Kendra, you've been covering for my wife's affair for months. You've lied to my face at dinner parties. You've helped her deceive me and our daughter. Don't talk to me about civil." "Now wait just a minute," Greg jumped in, probably thinking he could intimidate me with corporate authority. "You can't just—" "I can't what?" I turned to look at him, then at Damien, who'd been trying to make himself invisible in the corner of the booth. "I can't call out a man who's been screwing another man's wife? I can't point out that your buddy here violated about 6 different company policies." Damien finally spoke up. "This is a private matter. Was it private when you were texting my wife explicit photos? Was it private when you took her to the Riverside Hotel last weekend while she told me she was at a conference? Was it private when you were making out with her right here in this bar 6 weeks ago?" The room was completely quiet now. Even the jukebox seemed to have stopped playing. Celeste's face was red. "Ollie, please, please what? Please keep pretending? Please keep being the stupid contractor husband who doesn't notice when his wife starts working late 3 nights a week? Please keep fixing up our house while you're planning your exit strategy." I stood up, and my voice carried to every corner of the bar. "Here's what's going to happen. Celeste and I are getting divorced. That's between us. But Damien," I looked directly at him, "you're going to learn that there are consequences for your choices." "What's that supposed to mean?" I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and hit send on a message I'd prepared earlier. "It means I just sent copies of all your text messages, along with documentation of your affair with a direct subordinate, to Meridian's HR department, their legal team, and the board of directors." Damien's face went white. "You can't." "I can, and I did, along with copies of the hotel receipts you charged to your company credit card for personal use. That's embezzlement, by the way." Greg started to stand up, but Pete appeared beside our table, all 6 feet 4 inches of him, with Danny Rodriguez and 2 other contractors flanking him. "I think you folks should probably head out," Pete said quietly. "This is a working-class bar, and we don't much appreciate executives who think they can shit on decent people without consequences." Kendra grabbed Celeste's arm. "Come on, we're leaving." As they stood up, Celeste looked at me one more time. "Was this really necessary, Ollie? You tell me, Celeste. Was 4 months of lying to me necessary? Was humiliating me in front of our friends and neighbors necessary? Was destroying our marriage for a middle-aged executive with a midlife crisis necessary? She didn't answer. They left in a group, walking quickly toward the door, while the entire bar watched in silence. After they were gone, the room gradually returned to normal conversation levels. Pete brought me another beer. Feel better? Not yet, but I will. My phone was already buzzing with text messages. From Maddie, who'd apparently heard from someone that her parents were getting divorced. From my brother in California, who'd gotten a call from Marcia Peterson. From 3 different neighbors who wanted to know if the rumors were true. But the message that made me smile came from an unknown number. Mr. Harlan, this is Jennifer Chen from Meridian's legal department. We need to schedule a meeting regarding the materials you sent us. Mr. Voss has been suspended pending investigation. I typed back, happy to meet. I have more documentation if you need it. Phase 3 was about to begin. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my kitchen reading the local newspaper's business section when I came across a small item that made my morning coffee taste better than it had in months. Meridian Tech Solutions announced the termination of Senior Vice President Damian Voss following an internal investigation into policy violations. The company declined to provide specifics, but stated that the decision was made in accordance with their zero-tolerance policy regarding workplace conduct. My phone rang. Pete, you see the paper this morning? Just finished reading it. How's it feel? I looked around my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd discovered Celeste's affair, where we'd had our final conversation as husband and wife, where I'd planned the systematic destruction of the people who'd thought they could lie to me without consequences. It feels like justice. The divorce had been finalized the week before. Celeste got half the house value, half our savings, and half our retirement accounts. I got the house itself, which was what I'd wanted anyway. She'd moved to Hartford, taken a job with a smaller company, and was reportedly dating a divorced accountant she'd met through Kendra. Damien had disappeared entirely after losing his job at Meridian. Word was he'd moved back to New York, was working for a startup, and was having trouble finding executive positions because of the circumstances of his termination. Amazing how quickly corporate networks could turn toxic when someone became a liability. Kendra had survived professionally, but lost most of her social circle when it became clear she'd been enabling Celeste's affair. Turned out that covering for cheating friends wasn't as popular in suburban Connecticut as she'd thought. You hear from Maddie lately? Pete asked. She's coming home for spring break next week. My daughter had taken the divorce better than I'd expected. Not well. No 19-year-old wants their parents to split up. But she'd understood when I explained that sometimes marriages end because people grow apart, and sometimes they end because someone makes choices that break the foundation beyond repair. I hadn't told her the details. That was between Celeste and me. What about you? You doing okay? I looked out the kitchen window at my backyard, where I'd started building a deck that I'd been planning for 5 years, but never had time to complete while I was trying to save a marriage that was already over. I'm good, Pete. For the first time in months, I'm actually good. After hanging up, I poured another cup of coffee and walked out to the deck project. The foundation was solid, the framing was square, and the boards were going down straight and true. It was going to be beautiful when it was finished. A place where I could sit in the evenings and appreciate the work I'd done with my own hands. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, I wondered if it was Damien or Celeste, but when I opened it, I found something else entirely. Mr. Harlan, this is Sarah Mitchell from Channel 8 News. We're doing a story about workplace affairs and their impact on families. Would you be interested in sharing your experience? I deleted the message without responding. Some stories didn't need to be told to the whole world. Some victories were best enjoyed privately, in the quiet satisfaction of knowing that people who thought they could lie and cheat and manipulate without consequences had learned otherwise. I picked up my hammer and went back to work on the deck. There's something deeply satisfying about building something that's going to last. Something that's based on solid foundations and honest craftsmanship. Something that won't crumble the first time it faces a little pressure. By noon, I had another section of decking completed. The work was going faster than I'd expected, probably because I wasn't distracted by wondering where my wife really was or what she was really doing. There's a lot to be said for not having to waste mental energy on other people's lies. My neighbor Tom Bradley came over around lunchtime with a cooler of beer and an offer to help with the deck work. Tom was a good guy, a plumber who understood the satisfaction of building things that worked the way they were supposed to. Heard about the divorce, he said, handing me a beer. Sorry, man. Don't be. Best thing that could have happened. Yeah? How's that? I gestured at the deck, at my house, at the life I was rebuilding on my own terms. Turns out I'm better at construction than I was at marriage, and I was pretty good at marriage. Tom laughed. Well, if you need help with anything, deck work, electrical, plumbing, burying bodies, just let me know. Thanks. I think I've got everything handled. We worked on the deck until late afternoon, making good progress and talking about everything except my failed marriage. It was exactly what I needed. Honest work with an honest friend. Building something that would be there long after all the drama and hurt feelings were forgotten. As the sun started to set, I stood on my new deck, with a beer in my hand, looking out at the suburban neighborhood where I'd lived for 15 years. The same houses, the same streets, the same neighbors, but everything felt different now. Cleaner, more honest. My phone rang one more time. Maddie. Hey, Dad. How's the deck coming? Almost finished. You'll love it when you come home next week. I can't wait to see it. Dad? Yeah? I'm proud of you for handling everything the way you did. Mom told me some of what happened, and I know it couldn't have been easy. I felt something tight in my chest loosen for the first time in months. Thanks, kiddo. That means more than you know. See you next week? I'll be here. After she hung up, I finished my beer and looked around at what I'd built. Not just the deck, but the whole situation. I'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to me and turned it into something I could live with, something I could be proud of. Celeste had been right about one thing. I was good at finishing what I started.